NoSo Connection. Welcome back to another edition of NoSo Countdown. We're counting down the greatest WrestleMania performers of all time. This is a great series organized by our good friend Ryan Gray. And of course, we have a lot of WrestleMania content. Him and I are counting down every WrestleMania match ever in a short format, all a minute or less. Every single match, we're almost there. That wraps up at WrestleMania weekend. We'll be previewing every match to come this year's WrestleMania. And this series as well, counting down the top 40 WrestleMania performers of all time. We're on number 22, and we have 21 and 20 also in this edition. But I'm here with the animal himself, Mr. Cowboy, the biggest Batista fan I know. So we had to draft him into business here today. So I'm going to ask you a pointed question right off the bat. When you think of Batista and WrestleMania, what is like your first thought?
That he got screwed in that triple threat match against Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton. That was his title. That was his moment, JT, and they stole it from him. Because of the stupid fans. It's like the Cody crybabies all over again, you know?
So you feel strongly that he should have, that you still believe at the end of the day that that moment wasn't worth it, that Batista should have won.
I feel like I've never been more right about anything, frankly. Look at what happened after that, right? Yeah. He became a giant star outside of the WWE because the WWE didn't know how to use him correctly.
Yeah, I think there's some truth in there. I think the risk at that point, because then they do it again the next year, was really alienating. Fans aren't always right? We know that. But it was a real risk of alienation by not putting Bryan in that spot. It almost would have benefited them if maybe they got hurt a month earlier and not been there. But then a year later, they do the same thing where they should have just waited and not put him in the Royal Rumble and have him lose. They should have just had him not come back until after the Rumble. But neither here nor there. I think he's got a really impressive resume when you really look at it. It's tight. There's not a lot to it, but it's a lot of really strong volume in there. And this feels like a real, I think, appropriate spot for me to have him. So he starts off, and you can see on the screen here, we have some star ratings baked in. We got Meltzer. We got our buddy John Canton from the John Report. Does a great job over there. And then we got a lot of Chad. We have a few other rotating in that third column. So we were lucky enough to get the Chadster himself and his ratings in here. But WrestleMania 20, Cowboy. This is Batista's first match at WrestleMania. Teams with Randy Orton, ironically enough, and Ric Flair, still in Evolution. They fight the Rock and Sock Connection, Rock and Mick Foley, who weren't active at that time. They came back kind of for Mick Foley wanted to have a mini feud to get Randy Orton elevated.
I remember this match.
Yeah, so it's a good one. I mean, I think it's really good, actually. It's a handicap match. It's a lot of fun. Batista, I would say, is not a huge part of it. The focus is really on Orton, and then Flair and Rock kind of stooging around. But did you feel like this was like this kind of starts, I believe, like Batista's march toward becoming a top guy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was a great start to the march. And obviously you're surrounding him with, you know, 4 of the biggest stars in the history of the company there. Like that's a great way to push the guy.
And that's really was like one of the smartest things they did with Batista was they just said, you're going to team with Ric Flair for like a year, and by osmosis, you are going to learn the business and how to do it. And that's what they did. I mean, he was the 4th guy in Evolution with Orton and who was also a rookie at that time, but in Triple H. But he spent a lot of time with Flair. Like they were tag team champions or all through this year after this WrestleMania. So by the time the next one came around, at WrestleMania 21, he's a megastar. He had just turned on Evolution and he beats Triple H for the world title. The match is a little boring, but it's standard Triple H match where it's like goes like 10 minutes too long and the wrong approach, where this really should have been probably Batista destroying him. They'd go on to have better matches in their feud, but he closes WrestleMania crowning as world champion, right? So this is a huge part when you look at that 1 year story for him.
Yeah, and if you look at the rankings here, Chad is generally like a little higher on Batista across the board. In this specific match, he's lower. Which I think probably speaks to the boring nature of it that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's just a little plotting. But Batista wins, so he's a megastar now. He gets hurt at the end of that year, so we don't see him at the next year's Mania. So he comes back 2 years later, and this is kind of a cool touch. So the main event of this WrestleMania was supposed to be John Cena versus Triple H rematch. Triple H tears his quad, so Shawn Michaels gets the main event spot against Cena. And also on that show was the Battle of Billionaires with Donald Trump and Vince and Lashley and Umaga and that whole thing. We love you, Bobby. So that Undertaker Batista was really kind of third billing, even though it was a world title match. And Batista, since he had come back from the injury, hadn't really cranked up in the ring. He was put on some boring work. I think he was a little, hesitant to not get hurt again. So there wasn't a lot of expectation on this match. But both of those guys are pissed that they weren't the main event. They feel like they should have closed the show, and they went out and had a show stealer of an amazing match, as you can see across the board, rated very highly. And it's just a 15-minute sprint for two big guys. They don't slow down. They throw bombs. It goes inside the ring, outside the ring. There were thoughts that Batista may end the streak, but Undertaker ends up winning the title. So it's a really great match that I think kind of gets overlooked. But I just love the legend of it, that they said, like, fuck you, basically. It went out there to show that they should have closed the show.
Yeah, and was that was going to be my question, was this a match where the outcome was actually a little bit in doubt, even though it was an Undertaker WrestleMania match?
Yeah, the streak had just started to become a thing. Like, at that point, it wasn't like this big legend. It would be 5 years later. But yes, I think there was a moment in there where they thought Batista was the guy, that they wanted to give him a marquee win and end the streak. So I would say it was probably on the upper end of opportunities where it seemed like that might be the one.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you got that one. So that's a great match. The next year's kind of a throwaway with Umaga. They do like a Raw versus SmackDown thing. Both guys seemed a little lost.
Chad relatively high on it, though.
Yeah,
I mean, you see the ones, and that is, right up there. What is it? Undertaker against Giant Gonzalez. That's like what I think of when I think of a 1-star match.
Yeah.
So Chad was a little bit higher than that on it.
It's in the Chad wheelhouse. It's two big guys that kind of smack each other around. So it's just not a lot of heat to it. And again, Batista had a huge, and Umaga had a really big year before. But by the time Mania comes, they feel like they kind of have nothing to do for them. So
a little like a Brock versus Dean Ambrose in Dallas kind of thing.
Yeah, or Brock versus Omos kind of thing.
Oh, even worse. Yep. Okay.
You should have like a big match lined up for a guy like Batista. So anyway, it's okay. 2 years later, so again, he gets hurt again. He's not at the next one. 2 years later now he's a heel. And this is some of everyone's like favorite Batista stretch, where he becomes like a Hollywood Dave pre-real big movie career. Calling out fat chicks and all that. He's shit on Cena for kissing babies. So he's a Vince guy. Vince is in his corner. He was helping Vince against Bret Hart. So we get Batista Cena here. It's a really good match. Another kind of like gladiator bomb fest. But heel Batista during this stretch before he retires the first time is some really good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So he retired shortly after the Cena match here.
Yeah, he fights Cena here, and then they fight a couple more times. And there's an amazing promo that I recommend watching. If knowing you're a big Dave Batista acting fan, they have one final match at Extreme Rules, and Cena like throws him off, FUs him off like a balcony, and he cuts a promo. He's in a wheelchair. He's got like the neck brace on, big sunglasses on, and he's basically crying about Cena abusing him and all this stuff, and he quits, and that's it. Then he's gone. But it's a really great promo. The whole heel run is awesome. So he's back. We just talked about that to start this off, right? He comes back at the 14 Rumble. He's primed to go have this movie star run, win the belt at WrestleMania 30. You talked about it. The match is great, but
yeah, that was a special time for me, as you know. That I apologize here. I'm dog sitting. Just bear with me 1 sec. Why don't you go outside? There you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, we told you it was about animals here today. So,
sorry about that, fans. Yeah, so that whole thing was special for me because that was me coming back as a wrestling fan when having not been a wrestling fan for a long time. The first premium live event I ever attended was Batista's win at the Royal Rumble, and I was an inadvertent heel. And it was cool.
Well, you didn't get it because you hadn't really seen you kind of started watching again that summer before, but I don't think you had been fully engaged in the vitriol that was going on around that time. So I think you were pretty caught off guard as like why everyone would be mad.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone was really, really mad. It's like one of the more hostile, I've been to a lot of sporting events, and it's one of the more hostile crowds I've ever been in my whole life for any event, period.
It's almost 10 years apart, so they had Cooley game almost to the day, I think. So it's probably the two closest you've had. But Batista, again, that was like less anti-Batista and more anger about Bryan. Like I think
it could have been anybody.
Yeah. It was really unfair. But again, Batista adapts. Like he put over Bryan. He was a class act. And he deals with it. And then they have some awesome stuff later with Evolution reforms. And you get Blue Tista and all that's he has a great little mini run after that again. So, All right, so then 5 years till his last match. During this time, he becomes a movie star, right? Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers, all that stuff. Comes back at WrestleMania 35. And I think this was an abject failure. And again, it wasn't his fault. They positioned him in a stupid way. He's already beaten Triple H a dozen times. He comes back, give me what I want. I want you one more time. He beats the shit out of bloody Ric Flair. And then the match, and we were at this one in MetLife. This match is terrible. Like, I mean, it's 35 minutes, I think. The whole segment's like over 45 minutes. Triple H gets a movie star entrance. Batista is the movie star, gets no movie star entrance. You know, it's not good.
Yeah, the Triple H entrance to this match was pretty awesome.
Well, of course it was, but give Batista one too. Why isn't he coming out with the Guardians on a spaceship? Give me something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and with these two guys, I mean, I remember being at the show and thinking, like, and this was pre 2 nights.
Yeah.
So this was a long show. And this was a really, really long, drawn out match that, like, I think they didn't do a great job of having people care about the stakes. Like, I know it had like, I'll be honest, I didn't even remember the Triple H retire stipulation until I read it here. And I was at the show. So, and if I remember right, it was a little later in the show where it had a feel to it of, like, you remember when we were in Dallas, and we were like 6 hours in, and then they did like the Legends spot that took like another 40 minutes or something. And it was like, oh, come on.
Yep. No, agreed.
But none of that's Batista's fault. And
no, this was all just poor structure. Like, and again, I don't think anyone wanted to see him, even though his heel work was best. Like, him coming back as a heel against Triple H didn't make sense. Like, why does he want to beat Triple H again? Didn't make sense. You know, Danny O'Brien would have been ideal, honestly, if he comes back as a heel and says, I owe you a beating for taking my last Mania match away. But Bryan was in the middle of the Kofi stuff, and you couldn't take that off of him. So,
yeah, and I mean, you can't put him in there with Batista. Probably end his career by accident.
Right. Which, you know,
given
he was winding down anyway,
given the size difference.
Yeah, but maybe there had to be something better. Even him and Orton, they never had a one-on-one WrestleMania match. That could have been fun. But again, even if he did fight Triple H, just make it 10 minutes and a sprint. Like, no one needed 35 minutes at that time of night. The only highlight is when Triple H rips the nose ring out.
Yeah.
And beyond that, there's nothing else here.
You could have done that at any point
in 3 minutes.
Yeah,
that could
exactly.
have been the whole match. Rip my nose ring out. I'm done. Chad, he's going to revisit this thing. I don't wish anyone to watch it, but 3 seems like absurdly high on this. It's just bad. All right. So that's his whole career right there. Pretty much. He doesn't really have any extras. Like, a lot of these guys have some extra appearances, maybe a guest ref or interfere, but he doesn't do anything on the Manias he's not on. So there's no benefits to it. Is there anything you think that could have helped him?
His
overall resume. Like, if we want to bump him up this list, I think that,
I mean, just probably more volume, right? I'm assuming most of the guys higher on the list had more than 7 WrestleMania matches,
or some epic ones. Like an Andre the Giant has maybe less, but he's got like some all time.
Yeah. And I mean, his best match is probably the triple threat, which, I mean, pains me to say it, but that match was really all about Bryan, right? Yeah. And I mean, I think Batista did a great job putting him over, and it was good. The whole presentation was good, but the match wasn't about him. And then the next best match was also a loss for Batista against The Undertaker. So he doesn't really have that big signature, incredible match with a win at WrestleMania. So
I think looking at this
higher on the list.
Looking at this, I think his best statement is that him and The Undertaker stole the show on a night where no one expected them to have a great match. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's his statement. And then just being a great company man and putting over Bryan when he didn't, he could have thrown a fit and left, right? But fuck you, I'm going back to Hollywood. He didn't do that, right? Because I think Guardians was coming out. Wasn't it right around then? Like, that's why he came back, right? Was to put that over. So
yeah, and then he became such a big star after that. Like, if he came back now, like, I don't think you could really make him a heel. Everybody loves him.
And the whiff was they barely promoted the movie, right? Because there was a little bit of jealousy in there and everything. So I was like, it was so stupid, right? It was like such a stupid thing. Negatives, I think, is just that last match. I think that's what really hurts. I think if he comes back and has a fun final throwdown with someone that's not a 40-minute plotting match with Triple H, I think that takes away. I think the WrestleMania 21 crowning moment could have been better too. If that, it always comes back to Triple H. But I mean, those are the two matches to me that hurt him the most on this list.
Yeah, and that's not. I think, I mean, I'll just be Triple H is a little average, right, as far as having great matches, and I don't think is known as a guy that's really looking to elevate other people all that much.
Right. At least in that early stretch. I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit of credit. He put it over Batista 3 straight matches. I think he did try and make him. I think his I think his biggest issue is that he didn't never could read the room on what a match at a WrestleMania needs to be, when it's like the show's already 4 hours, 5 hours, and then we saw it in Dallas. You referenced Dallas before with him and Roman Reigns, right? Another match that did not need to be 25 minutes, right? It's like, read the room. Like, there's all these times where he closes the show and just doesn't need to go all these extra minutes. His best stuff is always condensed. He doesn't want to admit it. He's not Ric Flair going an hour. He's better in like a 15-minute bloodbath with Cactus Jack, or the match with Daniel Bryan is like awesome. And that's like, whatever, 15, 16 minutes. Like, he doesn't need to go 30, 40, like Flair and Harley Race. Like, that's just not what he is. I know he wants to be that, but it's not him. So be what you are. And that's his problem. But this isn't about him. This is about Batista. Do you feel like 22 it feels about right for him? Do you think he's low? I know you're a fan, but do you think this?
If I'm thinking objectively and looking at the resume, I think it feels about right. But it does, I mean, frankly, feel like a little bit of a lost opportunity that he's not higher, because I think his peaks in the WWE are right there with some people who are probably quite a bit higher on this list, and he just doesn't have like the WrestleMania resume that they do.
I think one negative for him is of his career is the injuries. And that's what people remember. So he missed 2 WrestleManias in his prime due to injury, right? So I don't know if he would have I think he was supposed to maybe fight Orton at 22. Like, that could have been really good. So like, I think, I think that hurt him, missing 2 Manias. And then, but he is all time, I think, overlooked a bit. Like, when we redid the greatest wrestler ever project last year, like, he went way. I think I had him inside the top 25 all time WWE. So like, I think overall, like, he's someone, as people are revisiting or realizing how great we had it. So
it's great that you give him that credit, Justin.
He deserves it, just like you. All right, so that'll do it for us. We're going to continue on this episode. This is kind of a OVW themed episode, so Randy Orton coming up maybe soon. But next up is number 21, another guy that has a lot of similarities to Batista. Sure, check out everything in North South Connection, like we mentioned. Check out the Cowboy once a month on Talking Docs with Jenny and Logan, and then of course they'll be back football season this week in the NFL. I'm here all the time. Subscribe to everything. Don't miss it, because we got a lot of cool stuff coming your way. Check it out. Thanks for having me. Animal style.
Hi, everybody. Matt Ferrell here. I'm joined here by, I thought Mike Eller was going to join me. I can't see him right now. Mike, are you there? I can't see you.
You see me now?
Oh, there he is, because we're talking about number 21 on the list, John Cena. Now, John's got quite the extensive WrestleMania resume, a long litany of matches here. I think we're probably going to break this down kind of into 2 segments here. You got the original world champion, top level star Cena, and then the later era, getting in where you fit in, John Cena. So let's talk first about the championship level, John. And of those matches, starting at 20 with the Big Show and going all the way through the double feature of the once in a lifetime, twice in a lifetime with The Rock, what sticks out to you as the best of that bunch?
In terms of the work rate, I think it's 23 versus Shawn. And I think Meltzer, Canton, and Chad, I think we have Chad Campbell's ratings here. It's definitely his best worked match. But even so, like, I don't know. There was a problem like where Cena was selling wasn't necessarily that great during that match. I would go probably like 4 and a quarter for it. Shawn seemed like a little pissed after the match. Did you have any other route that you wanted to take for this?
As far as like the best match, I think it's either Shawn or the first Rock match. The match versus Michaels might have been the best, as far as like A plus B work rate. I think the fact that the first match with The Rock, you didn't really know who was going to win. I don't think Shawn beating Cena at that point in his career in that point of both their careers at WrestleMania was really going to happen. While with The Rock, you never know if he's going to pull the power play. I'm not coming in if I'm not winning, which he did win that first one. So I think I would probably lean slightly to that first one against The Rock as like my favorite of the group. But the one against Shawn is definitely right behind it, number 2.
Do you think he's like kind of overrated? Like as a champion, do you think he's like a little bit overrated from 20 to 29?
Yeah, here's the thing. When Ryan asked me to do Cena, I was like, oh, I'm as a newer member of the NoSo community, I'm surprised I'm getting called on for something like this. And then it was 21 and it surprised me just on first blush. And then you look at the list and it's like, yeah, this isn't really that great. Like it's all fine. 20 to 29 run, other than that Miz match, which is terrible, but you know, Miz got knocked out 5 minutes into it. But it's like it's all fine. And like most of the builds, I wasn't super into either. And I think maybe that's part of his Cena being milquetoast, maybe, because really called out to me like the stories do now or when I was younger. And I don't know, what do you think about that, Mike? Do you feel like the story build for these main event matches for Cena, how did that come across?
Yeah, I didn't love it. I definitely agree. The JBL, I didn't hate the build, but I think what followed was a little bit better. I know JT has said he thinks that JBL maybe should have won at Mania 21 and then win. And if I'm quoting JT wrong, I apologize, but I agree with it. And then win at Backlash in that awesome match they had. Like,
Yeah.
The Triple H one was Shawn, I liked the Shawn one, but they did like the wacky tag team partners who don't get along win the titles. I didn't love that.
You shoehorned into the Big Show Edge. The Batista one's not bad, where that's probably the best, I would say, of all of these, the builds. I mean, I guess the build for the first Rock match is, holy crap, it's The Rock versus John Cena.
Right.
Which I guess you don't need too much else for that one. But as far as the ones with, you know, regular roster guys, the storylines are kind of just there. I wasn't emotionally invested.
No. And that's not, I mean, I honestly, I hated Cena in college, like from 2007 to 2010, but I really grew to like him. So like in the past, I've gone back and rewatched these matches, like hoping like, oh, I'll wear them. I'll watch these now with a little bit more positivity, because I'm a huge fan of Cena now, like one of my probably top 2 or 3 all time, but it's not great. The matches, like we talked about, like what we were talking about, like best match, but like none of those matches, I think like I have to go back and watch this. Like,
yeah,
maybe the first Rock match, but that's it. Like, I don't really need to see any of these ever again unless I'm just like doing it like, oh, let's put it on. But if I never saw any of these again, I wouldn't be sad. I'd be fine with it.
I haven't seeked any of these out, you know, since the first viewing, I don't believe. Maybe JBL once for following along with the podcast, but I don't specifically remember. So like for as a run on top, I think we kind of agree, like 21 is at first you think it's probably not where he should be, but it actually is. Like,
yeah,
it's a good place for him. And then if we go into from 30 to 39, more of mid-card Cena, I mean, he's still big deal, but I mean, there's no world titles on the line. What sticks out to you in that 10-year run of, like, what was your favorite match or moment?
Favorite out of these? I know people didn't like who won, but I think I'm going to go with 30 with Bray Wyatt. 30 and 31, people want to always say, like, Cena should have lost. I agree he should have lost at 30. 31, I think he should have beat Rusev still. But, like, I liked the build. I thought they had a really good promo package. They had, like, did Eminem's Legacy for, like, their build with, like, I thought was a really good package. I thought the match delivered. I mean, it's one of the probably top 4 matches on the show behind the 2 Daniel Bryans and how you feel about the Battle Royal. They had a good feud. I just dug it. Like Bray getting into the mind of Cena, I thought it was like a much better version of what the Kane and Cena thing did in 2011, 2012. So it felt big. I think it added to the legacy of WrestleMania 30 being a really good show. What do you got?
That or Rusev? Which is crazy when you think that Undertaker is on this list and that part. And we're just like, nah, because it was that weird, is he going to do it? Is he not? And he gets squashed in like 3 minutes. yeah, I would probably say the match would be the Wyatt and the build up to that, and you're a liar, John Cena, and that whole build was nice, and the match was pretty good. I think probably the best moment in all those matches, and it doesn't even involve Cena, is Rusev coming out in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
And going to give a little highlight to that because there's 0% chance Rusev makes this list, so I'm going to throw that. This is the only chance to give more love to the tank, but it's an interesting mix of matches on here, and they're such a wide range. You have the fever dream of the second Wyatt match during COVID WrestleMania, which has got to be, even if you want to call it a match, I don't even know what you want to call it, an experience.
I think it's better.
Yeah, it's fun. It's not for a casual watcher at all, but for the people who are going to watch this video and the people who are recording this video, this is right up our wheelhouse. That video, the video match with Wyatt during the COVID mania. You had the weird Bellas and Maurice and Miz and Whip get married, and then they don't get married, and it's a whole weird thing. And the Austin Theory match this last time was like the most mailed in thing I think I've ever seen John Cena do. Because if a lot of people say bad things, but they just aren't a fan of Cena. But I don't think there's ever a time where you said he was mailing it in until that WrestleMania 39 match. That seemed like kind of like some buyer's remorse for signing up for that one.
I think that's where I would take the Wyatt thing over that. I would take the Bella thing versus the Miz's over that. I just think it was awful. Especially you got like a pretty fun run from Cena like later in the year with the bloodline. I don't know what you think about Austin Theory. I know this isn't an Austin Theory podcast, but I am not impressed with him. He just doesn't click for me. And is there any do you agree that that's like the worst thing he's done since 30?
Oh yeah, it's the worst thing he's done on this list. Maybe not as far as the star ratings, because that Taker Squash got low ratings on our scoreboard here, but it's still Undertaker and Cena and Mania, so it's kind of fun. While the Theory thing isn't. Finally, I think what Theory's doing now of being a goof, and just feeding into faces and getting his butt kicked is a good spot for him. But that's not someone who should have fought John Cena at the opener of WrestleMania. So that was a wasted opportunity. And I guess since this is a countdown, Mike, and a good way to wrap up looking at John Cena's WrestleMania, do you think we see him here at WrestleMania 40? I feel at this point, if he was having a match, we'd know. But are we going to get an appearance by John at the grandest stage this year?
I think we get an appearance. I think he kind of he's done some media roundup where he kind of insinuated that he was going to be on the show in some capacity. I think he just comes out, I don't know, Theory and Waller come out or do something stupid, and he just he had an interaction with Waller. Was it in London? I don't know. It was one of the pay-per-views. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was London when he said, "Let's do WrestleMania here," and
Waller.
Yeah.
So I would have those two. They could have a segment. You could even, again, get Theory involved with that. Just kind of culminate the last year of him kind of dealing with them.
Yeah.
But I don't think a match. I don't even think an impromptu match. I don't think we necessarily need an impromptu match either.
Yeah, in my Ryan Gray pie in the sky booking memorial moment, I guess maybe Cena stops Solo from interfering on Sunday night's main event. I think you get a big pop there. Kind of, Cena is defending himself from the beating he took in Saudi.
Yeah.
But whatever I don't know if that would be it. I'm just saying that would probably the high end of what you would expect from John this year at 40. As long as he has his clothes on instead of like he did at the Oscars. I think
people are talking about him.
Yeah. Hey, hopefully talking about this and then finding this video and checking out the North-South connection. Mike, you got any plugs before we get out of here? Is there anything you want to let the people know about?
You can find me here, on these countdowns. I get to hop on with Ryan every once in a while. I was on the Hardy podcast, who came in the mid-20s with JT earlier in this countdown. And I'm also every other week, depending on how many shows need reviewed, I'm on ChroNoSo monthly. So you can find me reviewing. Right now we're going through 1989, and so an exciting time in WWF.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find me I'm doing these videos and also on ChroNoSo Monthly. Stay tuned for an amazing breakdown of a brother love segment, which everyone needs in their life. And I also do C-Show recaps for 2003 Heats and Velocities to go with the Ruthlessly Aggressive podcast, which when you hear that, I swear I'm married. I have kids. I've kissed a girl. But you know, it is what it is. But Mike, thanks for talking about John Cena with me, and looking forward to WrestleMania 40.
Absolutely. Talk to you later, Matt.
All right. See you, Mike.
Bye.
All right. Hey, Christy, Tina, we are halfway through this WrestleMania countdown, and you are back. What's going on?
Hello, babies. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. And honestly, I'm super excited to be talking about Randy Orton. It's ridiculous.
Now, when you think of Randy Orton, he's one of your all-time favorites. What's your overall vibe on Orton?
Randy is definitely one of the best generational talents that like the sports industry has seen, whether it be wrestling or not. He is definitely on my personal Mount Rushmore when it comes to pro wrestling. He's been able to move and evolve through decades, through different versions of his character. And in every version of himself, he was able to resonate with the crowd. And not a lot of people can do that.
For sure. He can play either side of the fence and be quite all right. He's the absolute apex of a utility player. Up the card, main event, babyface, heel, whatever. They need him. He's there. Even recently in the tag team with Riddle, So overall, I think he is up there on any greatest WWE performers list of all time. But we are here to talk to him about WrestleMania. And when you think of Randy Orton, do you necessarily think of WrestleMania and his 18 matches? What comes to your mind?
I mean, with Randy Orton having 18 matches at Mania, it's kind of hard not to associate him with the grandest stage of them all. Now, were all of them did all of them bring the house down? No, but the fact that he has had regularly consistent work, where even his his matches that aren't the greatest are still basically 3 to 4 star matches, that's saying something to Randy's pedigree and how good he is. So the fact that with his long list of matches, they range from really good to excellent, says something to who he is as a performer.
And even the bottom of the barrel necessarily isn't his fault. It's just like a weird situation that he found himself in, and outside the box ideas, and him just being the ultimate team player, because that's really what he is, the ultimate team player within the WWE. But I just looked it up. He has the 3rd most WrestleMania matches of all time, behind Triple H is the most, Undertaker's the most, Triple H, then Randy Orton, and he just surpassed Shawn Michaels at 17. So
that's not a bad top 4 to be in, to be amongst the names of when it comes to the amount of WrestleMania matches.
Not for sure. But overall, it's kind of weird that you figure that perhaps he may be a little higher, having that much volume at WrestleMania. But overall, he doesn't really have much bad outside of the kind of race stuff that we'll eventually sink our teeth into. But overall, midway point, mixing everything, 2 main events, 5 world title matches. It's kind of felt like maybe he's a little higher, but put our comb through all this and see why he's 20.
Absolutely. I'm ready to go.
All right, let's rock and roll. So his first WrestleMania match, he's actually the heartbeat of this feud here, jumping in with Mick Foley. He's in the midst of his Mick Foley feud. Mick Foley grabs the Rock, Rock has a connection. Evolution joins Randy Orton, and then they have this kind of epic mid-card match, but it's overall a home run. I like it. In the midst of the New York City crowd, they were yearning for the Rock and the Sock, and Evolution was perfect foil here, and they get the win. This is Orton's 4th best match. Meltzer 3 1/4, Canton 4, Aaron 4 for a 3.92 average. What's your thoughts on this handicap match?
For this being Orton's first go at a WrestleMania, you can't do worse than being in the ring with Ric Flair, The Rock, and Mick Foley.
Yeah.
And of young Dave Batista. Like, this once again speaks to just how much they put a lot of weight in Orton's hands, even in his earlier years, trusting him to work with this pedigree of, stars amongst him. And he showed out, as he always does. Even at this early of a stage in his career, he was still an exceptional talent. So for this to be his first go-ahead, and for that match to be as good as it was, and for it to be booked as well as it was going forward, it was excellent for starting.
Yeah, it was really a highlight of Randy Orton. Honestly, it's probably a better spot than Cena opening the card. Those two guys kind of rival each other coming up, both WrestleMania 20 being both of their first WrestleManias. And I would say this is probably a better spot, even though Cena was in a great spot to open the card. So it's kind of like weird how these guys are on the rise together, and we can kind of mirror them as they're kind of back to back here on the list. And then we would find himself in the Legend Killer gimmick, and then he would kind of sink his teeth in with that. We're going after the streak with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 20. Meltzer 3.5, Canton 3.5, Aaron 4, the 7th best WrestleMania match for Orton. I think this is a little low. I think this is remembered much better than 7th. I like personally, I'll be like 4.25. I think Orton showed out big time and showed he can go out there and have a one-on-one match with a legacy superstar in The Undertaker on the biggest stage of them all at WrestleMania. I dig this performance with Orton.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For Randy, once again, to have this be his second go ahead and for it to be against The Undertaker, it's showing faith in a worker with an immense amount of talent and an immense amount of drive, and he knows what he's doing. So for him to be able to carry a match of that magnitude along with this legendary figure such as The Undertaker, and for it to be as good as it was, I absolutely agree that these marks should have been higher, but not everyone has good taste.
Well, they didn't, 3.5 is very good, 4 is great. So I get it, but I'm just a tick higher there. But overall, one of the first times where The Undertaker was kind of vulnerable within the streak, because this is the first time the streak was used as a gimmick too. The Legend Killer versus the streak, and that RKO on the kick on the near fall was probably the first time that streak was in jeopardy at WrestleMania. It had me. I remember it live in 2005.
Yeah, I can imagine that energy of just like the air being sucked out of the arena when you're absolutely not sure this time around, and for Randy to be given that first crack in the armor for Undertaker is a big rub.
Yeah, and then coming off that, he kind of finds himself in the main event scene still after that year-long feud with The Undertaker in 2005, and he finds himself in the midst of this Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero story. But overall, this match is kind of hampered at 9 minutes. You talked about it a little bit with your Eddie Guerrero with Richie previously, but at 9 minutes, they kind of were out there, but with not much to sink their teeth into, but man, they maximized that 9 minutes. And this is close to being an all-time match here at 3.5 stars, 3.75, 3.75. Just missing the mark of an all-time here. But if this is median for Randy Orton, this is a great performance. However, let's talk his character real quick. He's kind of going into a suspension here. He's not the best in the locker room at the time, and he needs to kind of grow up a little bit.
Absolutely. I feel like the weight started really affecting Randy around this point in his career, both like mentally and physically with what was going on. So for him to have the main event at this WrestleMania with these titans of the industry being Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio, which are on most people's wrestling Mount Rushmores as well. And it might have started affecting him a little bit more. For Randy Orton, this just wasn't as good as his best, which is still better than a lot of people's like perfection. Like it's insane for him.
Yeah, and if they're slapping his PP when he's misbehaving around here and he's still in the world title match, it kind of shows what they think of him overall. Originally, WrestleMania 22 was supposed to be him and Batista, and then it was kind of put on hold to a WrestleMania 23, and they just went with Undertaker and Batista. So Randy Orton kind of still not necessarily in favor with the company, was still presented in Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 23 instead of a singles match or a high profile match. You think of WrestleMania 23, Randy Orton would have been a perfect guy to represent Mr. McMahon instead of Umaga, right? You would think an up and coming star or whatever, but they just kind of weren't necessarily thrilled with him still at this time. And he had a lot to growing up to do, but overall for WrestleMania 23, and this is kind of where his resume takes a hit in a way, because if your second best match at WrestleMania is a Money in the Bank match, then it's just like, all right, there's a lot of great, but there's not a lot of tip-top great really for Randy Orton. Because when we say great, we say 4 stars or above is an all-time match, and Meltzer 4.25, Canton for Aaron 3.75 for a 4 average, and your 4 average is your second best match, and it's an 8-man match. It's kind of like, all right, that's maybe why Orton isn't in the teens or in the upper teens, and why he's 20 halfway here is kind of because he doesn't really have necessarily the tip top stuff. At WrestleMania.
Like, it's unfortunate that Randy kind of got in his own way for a very, very large chunk of his career, where he either just couldn't play nice with others or there were some personal issues he was going through, but it definitely kind of started him in the earlier years of his career, both in ring and also with like the relationships backstage with the higher ups. So there's been a few times in his life where he's had to build himself back up from the bottom, and he's always managed to do so. But I would love to see like the Spider-Verse version of Randy, where he was just rocketed to the top and it was never ceased, and just where he would be now if that was the case.
Yeah, for sure. And this is like the kind of the tail end of his like immature, like, all right, let's grow up, dude. You failed a few wellness tests that we are overlooking. You're a bad boy. We're sick of slapping your PP while pushing you at the main event scene. You know, you're in your mid-20s. We got to trust you, and you got to grow up and move on. And he starts to do that. You find at WrestleMania 24, he finds himself in a triple threat world heavyweight title match against John Cena and Triple H. And what's kind of linked that together with the 25 here, the main event, his first main event. This feud was hot in 2009 against Triple H. He had just punt Vince. Vince got Triple H. You kind of have Triple H and Vince versus Legacy. So overall, 24 is probably the better match, and 25 is the more marquee match, but it's kind of a failure in a way, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Like for the storyline that they were trying to go for to the end point that they got to, I don't feel like it kind of justified Randy being used the way that he was. I feel like, especially for like the John Cena Triple H match, it was an incredibly worked match. It's some of the best guys in the industry doing what they do best. But I just wasn't a fan of how like everything kind of ended up, especially when it came to Randy.
Yeah, they go with him at 24 winning. I love that spot where Triple H gets the pedigree, goes for the pin. Orton comes in with his famous punt, you know what I mean? Punts Triple H and then gets the pin on Cena. So I like how he sneakily snuck away with that match. And at 25, they have this blood feud. It's the PG ever, but still, it's a blood feud. They're so personal. He kisses Stephanie in the build. He punts Vince, like I said earlier. And then they go right before the bell. They're like, if Triple H is disqualified, he will lose the belt to Randy Orton. And you're like, what? The crowd had no investment. The crowd is just a terrible decision. And it just, it was a miss of a main event. This is Orton's first main event.
Absolutely.
This is the hottest he's been as a character at this, so far, too.
I honestly think that last minute change was an incredibly large mistake, because both of those men could do gruesome and gore and like heavier settings. But I'm not sure if they still didn't feel 100% on Randy at the time or whatever was happening, but they decided to pull that. And I just don't understand why. That would have been an incredibly cinematic match for the time, especially.
Well, it was tough because they had the legacy match with, you know, one of the best matches in WrestleMania history, match an hour with The Undertaker and Shawn. And that was a wrestled in-ring match. You're not going to go beat that. So why would you take away the aspects that the feud was building and making it personal and have a street brawl, which Triple H and Orton are really good at? So it was just a swing and a miss. I blame Triple H on that one. But Legacy would explode at WrestleMania 29, where he's been building up this group as he's a heel the last 2 or 3 years, and he takes a young Cody Rhodes and young DiBiase, and they find themselves early on a WrestleMania 20 card, and they go 9 minutes, and it's good. I would say it's a 3-star match. Good. It is what it is, but it's at the end of the day, it's just a highlight for Randy Orton as he transitions to a babyface now.
Exactly. I personally, I wasn't always super sure about Randy as a full babyface. I didn't think he could 100% pull it off, but somehow, with all of the completely abhorrent things he's done character-wise previously, he got me to buy him as a babyface. And I never thought in a million years it would happen, but he's just that good to where he can code switch so well that he'll have you backing him up either way. And that, once again, just speaks to just how damn good Randy Orton is.
But they wouldn't really lean on him at WrestleMania as a babyface these next few years. Real quick, CM Punk mid-card match. I like it. I think it's better than the grades here. I'd probably have it 3 3/4. And then he'd find himself against Kane. Again, 3 stars for me. I think that's kind of a good second match at WrestleMania 28. And then he would find himself with Sheamus in the Big Show versus The Shield. Again, 3-star match for me at the open WrestleMania 29. So he's opening these WrestleManias as a babyface here.
Yeah, so I think for some reason in my soul, something must have been going on behind the scenes, because you don't have Randy be as hot as he had been for as long as he was to just immediately start using him at tops of shows for mid-card style matches. I can't believe that he would be doing the work that he was doing at the top of his career to suddenly just kind of drop to like lower to mid card and just have that be for no reason. Because it's Randy Orton. What do you mean he's not consistently in your main events? He's too good. And don't get me wrong, the matches that he had would be excellent matches for someone of a lesser caliber. But because it's him, it doesn't seem like it fits. This seems like a very weird point in his career, like a very weird lull.
It's not like he wasn't used as a main eventer at these times, but it was kind of like his turn as a main eventer wasn't necessarily at WrestleMania. He was probably used within the summer as a main eventer, and then 27 through 20 or 29 is kind of when The Rock's coming around and all these Undertakers coming back. Triple H isn't a full-timer and he's a part-timer. So it's just like, all right, we'll use Orton as that legacy star, but at WrestleMania time, he kind of finds himself lower. And overall, again, he doesn't really have bad matches whatsoever. He just has good WrestleMania filler. And that's kind of how we look at that within his resume at this time.
Like, I just think that, you know, like for someone as like I'm a huge Randy Orton mark, like ridiculously so. So to just know that he wasn't being utilized 100% at this point really breaks my heart, because with the people that were at the top of the card at the time, I felt like he could have had amazing rivalries, but it just wasn't written in the cards for him during that period.
WrestleMania 29. What about him and The Rock instead of, you know, twice in a lifetime? So I don't know, whatever. He would find himself in the main event again, and that was because at SummerSlam, he would kind of start with the Authority, turn on Triple H or whatnot, and the Daniel Bryan saga would continue. At WrestleMania 30, he'd been champion since on and off champion since SummerSlam, and Batista had just returned. So we're going to get this Orton-Batista legacy blow-off. I mentioned earlier at WrestleMania 22, perhaps, it was the scheduled match, but we're finally getting it at WrestleMania 30. But the hell? What the fuck? No one wants it. You know what I mean? So it's just like there are different points in their career. It kind of would have been cool at WrestleMania 22, but at WrestleMania 30, no thanks, guys. It's the yes movement, and Daniel Bryan finds himself in the main event like he should have been, and this is Randy Orton's best WrestleMania match at all time. Meltzer 4.5, Canton 4.5, Aaron very low at 3 3/4. Personally, I'm probably 4.5 myself, just based on the moment of Daniel Bryan. But Randy Orton and Batista are awesome in this. They really do a service to Daniel Bryan, putting him over. And, you know, those are two unselfish guys that kind of have been perceived as selfish coming up on the rise, but it's not their time. And they do a service of putting Bryan over and making him look awesome for that awesome WrestleMania moment at 30.
Absolutely. Daniel Bryan winning that match was the correct choice, as we all know. There was no question about it. But Randy and Batista, like you said, were able to work with Bryan to make him seem even more like much more of a beast than he already was. And that's how good you have to be as a superstar, as a professional wrestler, that it's not just about getting yourself over. You also have to make sure that your partner gets over as well, whether it be your little partner or the person that you're working in the ring against. And they all were so unselfish when it came to just the gravitas of the weight of the, you know, like it's a weighted moment. It was a huge moment for Daniel. I really feel like Randy knew what it was and what he had to do to get him over, and he did exactly what was supposed to be done. It was absolute perfection. I would have given it a 5, honestly, as you said, not only for the work in the match, but just the emotional moment of Daniel finally succeeding. That was just a 5 for me.
The Triple H match is a very close 5 for me also. So yeah, the whole night for Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton was a crucial foil to it, as he was a legacy star. And then he would find himself in a legacy star, but earlier in the card in an important match against Seth Rollins. He'd just been kicked out of the Authority, and Orton, you know, he was the guy in the Authority, and then Rollins sees himself on the ascend and kind of forces Orton out. They come to collide at WrestleMania 31, but this match is known for one thing and one thing only, and that's Randy Orton's awesome tights. I love those tights. Bring those things back. But of course, no, it's that beautiful, oh my God, that epic RKO out of nowhere off the reversal for the curb stomp. The referee marks out instantly and pushes him. I mark out at home. I still mark out watching this. This is Randy Orton's 5th best match. 4 stars, 3 3/4, 3 3/4. I'm probably closer to 4. This is great. I love it, but that spot is fantastic.
Absolutely. That pop-up curb stomp into the RKO is probably the best still shot I've ever seen, ever taken. Just Seth hanging mid-air suspension as Randy waits to catch him on the way down is one of the best WrestleMania shots I've seen. And the match was a good match. It's architect Seth Rollins specifically and he's probably my favorite version of Seth.
I kind of agree.
Me
honestly,
personally, I'm a sucker for him. And then with Randy, Randy's always gonna work well, especially with the younger superstars. I feel Randy does very well against, especially like someone like a Seth Rollins. So that match was good for like where it was on the card. But as you said, it's the main pop of that RKO, which is my opinion is probably one of, if not the best finisher in the industry for the way it looks, for the way it can be hit, for like the execution of it. It's up there.
Oh boy, this next one. Let's just do them both together. The Fiend at 37 and Bray Wyatt at 33. This is the first 33 is the first WrestleMania that I bring my boys, and Eli falls asleep during this match. Like, what are we doing? Like, Orton just won the Rumble. The feud in 2006 off SmackDown Live, where Orton joined the Wyatt family and they kind of went off their separate ways and collided at WrestleMania 33, was very well done. There was a lot of juice and anticipation here. Bray Wyatt's your new champion. He's hot. Orton just won the Rumble. And then they put Bugs in the ring, and this is just all-time bad. Me and Justin have this in the 390s on a WrestleMania countdown. No service to Randy Orton. I'm sure it was just a terribly pitched idea, but at 10 minutes and 30 seconds, it was just flat. I believe it was coming off the Hardy moment, so the crowd wasn't already exploded, and then they throw Bugs on the canvas, and
I would have rather them
this is just a no for me, dog.
In the ring than the YouTube clip of maggots that they pulled and just projected onto the canvas. And this match did the magical thing of not doing anything for anyone involved, including Bray.
Yep, it cut him off.
The spooky Yuki stuff was supposed to be for him, to benefit him, and it literally made them both look terrible.
And the feud was good. The feud was hot. And then they put it on ice, and it's dead. There's nothing going on. And then they have to transition to Jinder Mahal.
That Wyatt compound match with him and Randy in the spooky fridge. I didn't like that either. No. So like it's like someone overheard someone talking about where Bray Wyatt's gimmick was, and then had like Chat GPT make a match based on what they thought it was, and then we got projection maggots at WrestleMania.
If Chat GBT was around in 2017, it wouldn't have lasted and debuted in 2022. No chance. Whatever. It would have. This worm thing would have fucking broke it. No chance. But they didn't learn. Have you ever heard of a box-like structure? That's a box-like structure was a phrase that Michael Cole said in a WrestleMania open match. Alexa Bliss has emerged from a box-like structure. Nothing else needs to be said about this bullshit. Continue.
Poor Alexa got messed up on that one too. Like everyone got
imploded. Why is there goo coming from her head? Like, what are we doing?
I love a good goth, like Hot Topic crown. The next is the next is the next person, but like the Ivan ooze dripping from the face. I wasn't like the Jack in the Box thing. I like a roll up. I think he got him on a roll up as well. Like it was just a plethora, a Pandora's box of fucking nonsense that managed to just Hydra bomb all of them.
And it would be the last time we see Bray for like almost 2 years. It was very, 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 very weird. I hate to shit on it, but you got a box-like structure. What are we doing? Come on. 34 is harmless. He's the U.S. champion. He loses it in a fatal four-way. I don't even think he's pinned. It's kind of just filler and a spot on him in the card and him working with 4 younger guys. It's whatever. I mean, it shouldn't hurt or help his resume. It is what it is.
I feel like Randy was more there as like a chaperone for the others, because if you think about it,
that's a good way to put it.
It's Bobby Roode, it's Rusev, it's Jinder Mahal. The most seasoned one out of all of them is Randy. So probably just to make sure that the others were looking good during the match, you had to have someone like a Randy in there, which I guess speaks well to them trusting him with working with, like less experienced talent in comparison to him. Because even though they're all amazing workers, Bobby Roode, Rusev, and Jinder Mahal, Randy's the most experienced out of all of them.
It just feels like a game that if you want to learn WWE 2K24, you would pick Randy Orton and then you put 4 jobbers in there and just learn the moves. That's how I would think of that. But it shouldn't hurt his resume. It's a good match. I'm so hurtful. This match at 35 hurt my eyes. I was there live and they fucking put lights directing in my section, and I couldn't watch this match. So this match,
we
WrestleMania
were
35,
sitting behind the Titantron that 35, and we heard you guys screaming
yes,
for them to cut the light.
so I'm right across from the entrance, probably like adjacent from you. If you're at 12 o'clock, I'm at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
And the lights were just spewing right at me. I'm like halfway up. I'm not all the way at the top. It was weird. But this match was actually supposed to open WrestleMania 35 until Brock Lesnar said, "This doesn't work for me, brother. I need to open this match. I'm going to go out there with Seth and do a 4-second match. So the farm in Dakota needs me." So this match was a little weird, but overall they went out and had a very professional match. I'd probably say it's very similar to his late 20s where he was kind of a mid-card guy, but him and AJ are such professionals at this time too. 60 minutes and 20 seconds, 3 1/4 from everybody. I would maybe go 3.5. I think it's a very good match.
Absolutely. Like you can do worse as an opponent as AJ freaking Styles.
Yeah.
And it's basically at this point in both of their careers, two legends working together at like the grandest stage of them all, whether or not they were like at the top of the card or mid. It was still a really, really good match for what their storyline was at the time. I felt like the quality of the match actually kind of outshined the lead up from the storyline to then, but they're just excellent workers. Maybe if it was earlier in the card, you guys would not have had the light issue. And maybe Brock Lesnar would have shined his light in your eyes. This is a fuck Brock Lesnar house always on that demon time, always on those hours. So if Randy Orton gets a better spot in the card because Brock Lesnar wants to be a little bitch, then so be it.
But overall, it's a very professional match and it's good. It's just kind of outshined by the fucking light. All right, anyways, we're going to skip Edge real quick. I want to finish with Edge. With Riddle against the Street Profits and Alpha Academy, open day 2 of WrestleMania 38. Man, coming off the Stone Cold stuff, the vibes were high at WrestleMania day 2, and this match just played into it. I personally think it's a great match. I have it at 4 stars myself, 4 1/4 from Meltzer, 3 3/4 from Canton, 4 from Aaron. For a 4 average, this is Orton's third best match. I love the pace, 11 minutes and 30 seconds. I adored RK Bro. I thought it was perfect timing for Randy Orton in his career to go on this year hiatus with Riddle. Personally, I like Riddle, whatever. So I'm just not gonna, we're not gonna jump into there, but whatever. I'm just glad that RK Bro has a spot in the WrestleMania history and they knock it out of the park.
Absolutely. Like this entire match is built with just ridiculously athletic people. The Street Profits, Montez Ford, and Angelo Dawkins. Angelo Dawkins is a tank, is a full tank and a half. Montez Ford is probably one of the best high flyers for his size because he's a little taller than your normal high flyer, but the height he gets with what he can do is absolutely unheard of. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that flip in this match where he jumped over the board. Unreal. Yes,
it's ridiculous. Chad Gable and Alpha Academy he's so highly underutilized. It makes me sick, physically sick, how underutilized Chad Gable is. And even back then, during this time period, he was still, like sort of baby Angle. He's still just a version of Angle, but he was still kind of like not fully developed in this Mania particularly. But he's ridiculously insane. Matt Riddle is one of the best strikers I've seen. Whether or not you like him or not, you can't deny that he's good. And he's then excellent. Randy Orton, like you're going to have a good worked match, no matter how low on the card it is.
Like I said, I adore the tag teams at this time. It deserves to be third, but for like Randy Orton, and this is your third best WrestleMania match, it's kind of why we're 20, not, closer to 10. But overall, let's close with Edge. There is a good match within this 36 minutes and 35 seconds. Christy, do you know that they edited WrestleMania 36?
Oh, absolutely.
So why the fuck would they not edit 36 minutes down to 25? Like they're walking around. He chokes him with gym equipment. Why the fuck wouldn't they take that out? Now this match is 36 minutes because both these guys are excellent sellers. Like they're selling it and whatever, but they're walking around the PC. Cut this shit in third. Cut 20 minutes out of this, and it's probably much more memorable. But even give us a 20-minute match and cut 16. But for 36 minutes and 35 seconds in a last man standing match,
this was Edge's acting reel for Percy Jackson because that's how long it needed to be. This, as you said, they're both excellent sellers, probably some of the best facial expressions you can get out of someone in the game. But I watched, this was COVID Mania, I believe, was 36. And I watched it because I needed to feel something, and I did, but then I got numb again because the match went too long. The storyline was a solid 20 to 25 minute match, would have been delicious, tasty, just enough. That extra 16 minutes, a full like championship division women's match within that match, it wasn't needed. You could have shortened it out, but you had like the Firefly. I would have rather the Firefly Funhouse run longer than this match run longer.
I adored that nonsense. It was nonsense, and I fully agree. We're not going to jump into Bray. We already shit on Bray, so let's kind of finish with Bray. I adored that Firefly Funhouse. But this is about Randy Orton and Edge. They should have edit. Like this WrestleMania is fucking edited. Edit it. Anyways, we're not gonna go crazy here. But that's kind of why we kind of digested it all. We talked about the highs, we talked about the lows, and we talked about the solid median of all of this. Do you think Randy Orton at 20 is appropriate?
Well, it's like what you said beforehand, that Randy is probably one of the best in the business to do it. But based off of solely WrestleMania and not everything that he's done in his career, only off the WrestleMania matches, 20 makes sense. Because for his best matches to be low, like upper mid card to lower like main event caliber matches, it doesn't make sense for him to be in top 5, top 10 when there are people that have had literal like God mode situations in their career. Randy's been consistent for a long, long time, but not a lot of them have been extremely big pops for him, which is unfortunate, which goes back to a lot of like him getting in his own way earlier in his career. But for him to be as consistent as he's been, with as many legends as there's been in the industry, for him to end up in the top 50, top 20, it's still an incredible feat.
Yeah, out of his 18 total WrestleMania matches, a 3.04 star rating average is pretty good. And Aaron's usually kind of tough on him. 2 main events, one's a home run, one's a miss. 5 world titles, 7 all-time matches. So the resume holds up. He's a pretty good WrestleMania performer. And in the median of 20, I've probably seen about right. If you're a big Randy Orton fan, perhaps you would make a case for him to be in the mid-teens and probably a little higher. If you think Randy Orton is extremely overrated, perhaps in the low 20s. But it's undeniable that he should be on this list, the 3rd most WrestleMania matches at all time. So overall, I think we did Randy Orton justice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And let's do justice to you. Where can we find you?
Well, babies, my name is Chrissy Tina. You can find me across all social media platforms at Chrissy Tina 16. I do a podcast with my best friend James called Wrestling with Friends, where we talk about everything from the golden era to now, because life is real sad, but it's a little less sad with wrestling and friends, because wrestling is always better with friends like Ryan.
Just don't show them that 36-minute Edge match. They will not be your friends anymore.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep as many as I can.
All right. Bye, babies.